Now I'll be looking at oxygen deficit and oxygen debt. The question is, why is a football player on bench or on reserve seat? Why would that player need to jog by the side of the pitch before entering the football field? At the end of the lesson today, you'll be expected to answer that question. Now, what is oxygen deficit? Oxygen deficit is the amount of oxygen that is needed but that is not supplied from outside your body. During respiration, you breathe in oxygen so that the glucose, the organic substrate that you have in your cell, can undergo oxidation to give you energy. So when you are at rest, you breathe in oxygen to bring about respiration and generate energy. But during physical exercise, a lot of energy is needed to meet the demand of that physical exercise. However, your body does not take in enough oxygen to meet the demand of that physical exercise. So the oxygen that is needed, that is not supplied from the outside, that you do not breathe in from the outside, is not an oxygen deficit. It's not an oxygen deficit. Now, what you ask yourself is, how will your body survive oxygen deficit? How will your body survive oxygen deficit? One, your body will need to fall back to the oxygen that has been reserved in your lung, in your myoglobin, in the fluid in the hemoglobin, so that excess oxygen that has been reserved in your system will now be used to bring about oxidation to generate energy to meet the demand of physical exercise, because enough oxygen has not been inhaled, enough oxygen has not been taken in to supply all the energy that is needed. Another way your body survives oxygen deficit is that you have creatine phosphate in your system. The creatine phosphate also contains inorganic phosphate. The inorganic phosphate, that is Pi, that can be used to generate energy. So your creatine phosphate has phosphate group that can give you inorganic phosphate. Now, the inorganic phosphate can be used to generate ATP to also meet the demand of energy that is needed during physical exercise. Now, lastly, your body can also survive oxygen deficit by carrying out anaerobic respiration. I will say during anaerobic respiration, that's respiration in the absence of oxygen. It takes place in your muscle to generate lactate. It takes place in your muscle to generate lactate. You can watch my video on anaerobic respiration to understand better the stages that are involved in anaerobic respiration. So that is the 3 ways in which your body survives oxygen deficit. Now, oxygen debt. During exercise, I said this region blue, that is color blue, is the amount of oxygen that your body does not take in, but has to take it from your system. You did not breathe in this region, the amount of oxygen at this blue region, you do not breathe it in. There are oxygen that have been reserved in your hemoglobin fluid, in your myoglobin, or in your lung to bring about respiration so that you can have ATP to carry out your physical activity. So when you stop the physical activity, that's physical exercise at this point, you are no longer running, you are no longer jumping from one point to the other. Now you are at rest. But while you are at rest, the rate at which you be breathing will still be high. You'll be breathing very fast. Though you are not carrying out any physical activity again. At that point, you are taking more than enough oxygen into your system. So this region in light green is the region that shows you the amount of oxygen you are taking into your system that you don't actually need. Now, at that point now, that oxygen that you are taking in is known as oxygen depth. And note, the volume of oxygen depth is the same thing as the volume of oxygen deficit. That means what you are lacking at the beginning of the exercise, now at the end of the exercise, you are now having it. The oxygen depth can be defined as the volume of oxygen that is required at the end of exercise to metabolize lactate that can be accumulated during anaerobic respiration. And I said that in my video during anaerobic respiration that you generate lactate. Your body system cannot store excess lactate, so it has to undergo oxidation to give you carbon dioxide and water. So during anaerobic respiration, the lactate that has been generated, you have to undergo oxidation to give you carbon dioxide and water. So the oxygen that is used to break down this lactate is known as oxygen depth. Now, the excess oxygen you take in after exercise, what do you do with that excess oxygen? One, it has said that it is used to convert lactate to glycogen in your liver cell. Also, it helps you to oxidize that lactate to carbon dioxide and water. Then the oxygen is also used to reoxygenate hemoglobin, myoglobin, and lung. During exercise, you take oxygen that have been reserved in your myoglobin, in the hemoglobin fluid, and also in the lung. You take those oxygen that have been reserved there during exercise. Now, immediately after exercise, you are still breathing very high. Taking in more than enough oxygen. So those oxygen that you have taken from the hemoglobin fluid, from the myoglobin, from the lung, will be restored onto them. Also, the oxygen is used to meet high metabolic rate. Then also used to restore the creatine phosphate. So pay detailed attention to what I just taught you now to this video, having in mind that the amount of oxygen deficit is also the amount of oxygen depth. The oxygen deficit is the amount that you lack at the beginning of exercise or strenuous activity, while oxygen depth is the excess oxygen that you take in after the strenuous activity. Now, you should be able to answer this question. Try that. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe on my other video as well.